The brook trout is a highly mobile species. They maneuver about their watery domains, searching for the most beneficial locations to find food and survive droughts. However, many brook trout streams across the Commonwealth are crossed by man made stream crossings, many of which restrict the trout's movement due to their poor construction. One such example is the former crossing of Cedar Run, a tributary of the Robinson River located near the town of Syria, Virginia. The old structure was a culvert that created a 6-foot plunge, an impossible barrier for the trout and other aquatic species to cross. In order to open the nearly 3 miles of barren creek above the blockage, a new high clearance bridge was constructed. To learn more about the importance of properly constructed crossings and this new bridge, I spoke with Seth Coffman, the project manager for the Shenandoah Headwaters Home Rivers Initiative. What has this bridge done to improve the waterways upstream of the crossing?
And so in this particular project in the Whiteoak Canyon trailhead there, the existing crossing that was there was put in, decades ago. It started to deteriorate in 2018. It experienced a lot of flooding, which washed it out even more, and they had to close down that crossing. So vehicles were not able to drive across it anymore. In addition to that, it was also an impassable culvert for fish. So native fish like brook trout, American eels, dace, other native species could not freely move upstream and downstream through that crossing, which fragments habitat. And so by replacing that failing culverted crossing with a bridge, you allow fish to obviously freely move in and out of that stream so they can access the habitat that is upstream of there. And the other thing it benefits in terms of kind of stream function and hydrology, because that culvert was undersized and failing, you're trying to get a whole bunch of water through a very small space. And so during times of flooding, it would overtop the road or wash out the road, or you'd have a lot of stream cobble and rubble build up on the upstream end of that crossing, clogging that pipe and causing more damage.
How do certain man made stream crossings, such as culverts, negatively impact populations of trout and other aquatic species?
And so a culvert can block fish movement a number of ways. One, if a culvert is undersized, you end up having almost like a fire hose effect of water coming through that pipe. And when it comes out, it's shooting out at a very high velocity, and it can scour out the stream channel at the outlet of the pipe, which creates a big jump barrier. And so you have what we call an outlet drop. So where the water comes out of the pipe, there may be a foot, 2 feet, 3 feet of drop from the bottom of the pipe to that water surface in the channel. Most of our native fish here in the East can't make that jump. And so you have these jump barriers. The other issues you have is some culverts or some box culverts can spread the water out so much it's too shallow, and there's not enough water for a fish to move through there. Even though it may be flat, it may not be moving real fast. The other one is, and this one's a little bit harder to quantify through research, is there just a behavioral issue? Do fish not want to move through those long culverts? And so is there something there? And so those are the ways that they can block fish from moving. And the impact that has is it starts to fragment habitat. And so if you imagine you have a stream, no road crossings on it, and fish can move freely through the whole thing. And then you come in, you put a road in for, say, a development or logging purposes, and that culvert ends up being impassable to fish. Now you've split that, what was one big piece of habitat, into two. And let's say you have a big drought one year, and that upstream section, the headwaters go dry, those fish have to move out or die. You get back into a more wet year, that area gets rewatered. Those fish now can't move back into that habitat upstream. And so now you've shrunk the available habitat and the amount of habitat those fish occupy. And then that has impacts on their long-term sustainability from a population perspective.
How do you determine which stream crossings receive prioritization for a refurbishment?
It comes down to a lot of factors. So, one, you have to have whoever owns the crossing or the road needs to be a willing participant, so a willing landowner that wants to do something about it. But when you look at it on a whole and say, okay, we know there's a lot of crossings on the landscape that are barriers to fish movement. How do we make sure we're putting our dollars where they make the most sense, where we can get the biggest bang for the buck, so to speak? And so to do that, we look at a lot of factors. One might be to look at cost of what would it cost to replace that culvert in relation to how much habitat are we going to reconnect. So meaning how much habitat upstream of that impassable culvert can we reconnect if we remove the barrier? We wouldn't want to go in and replace a culvert with, say, a bridge or a bottomless arch if we know a quarter mile upstream there's a natural waterfall. You may not be gaining a whole lot of habitat there. And so you want to make sure you're looking upstream and downstream to know what else is going on in the watershed. The other thing you look at is you think about, what species or target species or community of fish you're looking to move through there. Brook trout in a lot of cases when you think about invasive species and competition. So we may be wanting to restore brook trout habitat, but downstream there may be a section of that stream that is, say, seasonal water that may get stocked with, say, non-native brown trout. And we wouldn't want to create a scenario where we're inviting, non-native brown trout to move into what was previously only brook trout habitat and creating that competition.
How common is this problem throughout the Commonwealth of Virginia?
Yeah, there's conversations among practitioners and managers talking about that now. And, we know there's a whole bunch out there. The first way you get a kind of a handle on what that is you do surveys to assess, one, how many crossings, road stream crossings are out there that are impassable to fish. And there are tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of road stream crossings in Virginia, not just on brook trout streams, but all over, that are impassable to some form of fish. So it's a pretty big problem. A lot of folks have been thinking about it and thinking of ways to get a handle on it. Some of that's through, professional biologists doing road stream crossing assessments and surveys. Volunteers can be trained to come out and do kind of a course screening of those crossings to kind of whittle out which ones are not a problem and which ones are a problem. So you can start to then prioritize and sort through where you might want to focus your energies and your resources.
What can the public do to assist Trout Unlimited, the Piedmont Environmental Council, and other environmental organizations in creating more sustainable crossings?
Yeah, I think it's just being aware. Finding a local TU chapter is a great way to start if someone wants to get involved and look at a lot of what started for the project of Whiteoak Canyon was the Rapid NTU chapter doing culvert assessments in that part of the watershed to see where they did have problems with fish passage, and then start working with PEC and Trout Unlimited. And so, as a landowner, if you have farm roads or forest roads or even, a driveway that crosses over a stream, if it's a culvert, or let's say it's a concrete crossing with culverts inside it, it could very likely be causing a problem. And so if you see that and you're concerned about it, you can reach out to, organizations like Trout Unlimited. The other one is just kind of being aware of it and thinking about it. Talking to VDOT and the Department of Transportation, and encouraging them when they are replacing culverts or building new roads to incorporate fish passage and aquatic organism passage into those designs, so that when they put a new road in, they're not dealing with a problem of it being a fish barrier 15 or 20 years down the road.
I hope you'll take a few moments to visit my website at www.flyfishingva.org in order to learn more about this video, as well as ways you can help support one of my favorite environmental organizations, the Virginia Council of Trout Unlimited.